Hey guys, Solomon here. Hope you're having a great day. I thought in today's video we could start a new series on beginner chess openings. Okay, now this is not me saying that these openings are only good for beginners and no one else. This is more me saying that for a beginner chess player, these openings I highly recommend, right? Now, if you've recently started playing chess, or maybe, you've been playing for a while, but you don't quite consider yourself to be an intermediate or advanced player by this point, this series is to help you just get some options on your table, right? In each video, we're going to be going over one opening as white and one opening as black, okay? In which case, you can kind of think about these options that you have and try them out, see if you like them, right? Now, these first two openings that we're going to be covering in today's video were the first two openings that I ever played, right, as a kid. These are the openings that, I ever played seriously, right? Actually studied, learned about, all that kind of stuff. And, they served me well, and they really helped me learn a lot about the game of chess and learn to love it too, right? So we're going to be starting out with white. What is an opening that I recommend for the white player, right? And this is going to be a multi-video series, so it's not like this is the only opening for you guys, but a very strong opening for a beginner player that's going to help you in your understanding of chess and help you grow in your knowledge of the game is the Giuoco piano, okay? It starts out with the move of e4. Now, first off, what does e4 do? Well, really, it advances our central pawn and gets us some space in the center of the board, right? The more space, the better, generally, right? Now, sometimes we can over-push things, but generally speaking, to have a little space, have a little wiggle room, have some squares to maneuver our pieces is considered a good thing, right? So we gain some space. We're also attacking two squares here with that pawn, right? And our bishop and our queen are also activated. Notice all of these squares that I'm highlighting are on black's side of the board, right? So, if you're playing football or basketball or whatever it may be, they have their 32 squares, right, on their side of the board. We have our 32. Just by playing this move, we're already attacking 5 squares, right? Which no other move in chess for move 1 for white does, right? So e4, I strongly recommend as a high priority, or at least a high option that you need to think about if you're starting to play chess. Oftentimes black will counter this, right? They'll play that move e5, right? They're just doing the same thing we did, right? Now they're attacking 5 of our squares. In this case, though, we have the extra tempo, so we're going to attack this pawn, and oftentimes black will defend it with the knight, right? This is by far the most popular move that you'll see. And now we have bishop c4 going into the Italian game, which oftentimes turns into the Giuoco piano, right? Now, what does this move do? It attacks the weakest pawn in chess, right? This pawn is simply weak. And why is it the weakest? Because only one piece defends it, and that piece happens to be the king. So at some point, if you want to sacrifice that bishop and get that king out, there are times where that's a great idea to go for those checkmating ideas, right? Now, of course, we don't want to do it right away because it wouldn't really do much. Like in this case, I mean, if we take here, the king's just going to take back, and then what do we do next, right? I mean, we could check, but then we lose our knight as well, right? But all that to say, it's good to have a bishop eyeing this square just in case. In fact, in this opening, you're going to see an example of that. Here with the Giuoco piano, we're playing the move of c3, right? c3 is the main option. What's the point of this? To help prepare this d4 push, right? Gaining more space. But notice here, we're not just pushing this pawn here right away because it simply get captured off, right? Maybe by a bishop, right? Black would just win the pawn. But if we push to c3 first and then play d4, now it's not so simple, right? We have more support. We take back with the pawn. In this case, black has 2 pieces attacking the pawn. We have 2 pieces defending it, right? So, black's the initiator. They're going to end up losing that trade if they decide to start capturing off. What happens if they check, right? This is still the main line. In this case, we're going to play bishop out, right? And, okay, again, the main line here is taking the bishop on d2. I did want to mention, though, what to do against knight takes pawn, right? It may seem as if this pawn is just free, and in a sense it is, but we're going to get that pawn right back, right? We're going to take on b4, and notice now, bishop takes pawn on f7 with check, right? The weakest pawn in chess. And at this point, guys, we're down a piece, but we have a fork, right? Because the king is so exposed, we can bring our queen out, attacking the king, and simply winning this knight, right? If the knight tries to block, we're just going to take it anyways, and maybe even win this one too. And here, if we have a move like d5, win that knight. From this point, we're looking at moves like knight c3, right? Castling kingside. A move like bishop g4 here, by the way, is not very good for black because we're going to play knight e5 with check, forking that king. and the bishop. So, okay, we have about an even game, but, you know, for a beginner player, this is a great position to start playing and start getting familiar with, right? So going back, we have that move of bishop d2. If you have knight takes e4, we're going to take that bishop, sack on f7, and simply win that knight right back, right? What about the move of bishop takes? This move here is a great principle that you can really use in all openings, right? It just openings in general in the game of chess. If we take with the queen or the king, we're just going to lose this pawn, okay? And in that case, we don't have any tricks to get that pawn back, okay? It's just not good, okay? So we don't want to take with the queen or the king. The question is, though, which knight do we want to get out, right? Which knight do we want to capture back with? Well, notice here, guys, one of our knights is not very good. The other one's pretty good, right? This knight is a pretty good knight at this point. It's attacking 8 squares on the board, okay, which is the maximum amount of squares that a knight can attack. This knight, on the other hand, is only attacking 3, okay? So would I rather use my really nice knight and capture back or my bad knight and capture back? The answer is the bad one, right? This knight is not yet into the game. Let's get it into the game. And notice now we still have our 8 square knight here, right? Our octopus knight. And our knight on d2 now is attacking 6 squares, right? So both of these knights now are very solid. And here in this kind of position, by the way, I highly recommend that you memorize this line for white. You know, it's about, you know, to the end of it, it's about 13 moves. Just memorize that, and then, you know, the rest of it you can get familiar with. But I did want to mention, before going into the main line, which is d5, what happens if black just castles or something, right? Why is d5 such an important move for black? Well, because if they don't play d5, we're going to. And this is a huge space advantage for white. Very nice. If you play something like knight e7, I mean, black's just feeling a little bit cramped. And here, if a move like knight a5, that's even worse because we just drop our bishop back, right? Another principle that you can carry into your games. Do I want to trade here, right? If you have a bad piece, you want to trade it for a good piece. If you have a good piece, you don't want to trade it for one of their bad pieces. In this case, we drop our bishop back. Which piece is better, right? The bishop or the knight? The bishop's better, right? The bishop's a more solid piece. It's aimed towards the king side of the board. This knight, on the other hand, can't even move without simply getting captured, right? In fact, if black's not careful here, we're simply going to play pawn up, and this knight is trapped, and we're simply about to win a piece, right? So going back, you know, if black plays castling or h6 or something, we're just going to start steamrolling black in this position here, pushing, kicking those knights around, getting a really fun attacking game. So black here has to kind of meet us in the center and really even things out a little bit, right? In that case, we're going to capture back, play queen out, and it's interesting. Now this may be a little bit more helpful for you guys that aren't just starting to play chess, but I did want to mention this line of knight a5 as well. The main line is knight here. If you do see this move, you know, really forking your queen and your bishop, you can just play queen a4 check, right? Notice here, if a move like, you know, bishop d7, we simply win the knight. I one time had this move of c6 played against me, but this isn't very good because in that case, you know, that knight on a5 is just not very comfortable, right? In fact, we can just win the knight, or sorry, take the knight on d5, and then from this point, we can castle kingside, and there's a lot of ideas we have here. And again, this knight can't move. It can't move anywhere without getting captured, right? And b5 doesn't help because we just win the knight because the queen no longer defends it, right? So, you know, there's a lot that can happen there. So when we check, black's best move is to actually just go right back. Now it's up to you. Do you want to go back to the same position, or do you want to mix things up? Castling kingside is a great move. Queen a3 is also a pretty fun option, preventing black from castling, right? The only way for black to really allow themselves to castle is to put a piece in the way, right? And the best way for black to do this is to play queen e7 with check, in which case we take. And we honestly have a pretty similar approach to the main line that I'm about to show you, but just no queens. You know, about a dead even position here, but a fun position for beginners, and white, you know, with some very active knights that are ready to jump in and start doing some damage, right? So, okay, that's really the line that I wanted to mention with that move of knight a5, right? Now what else does black have available? The main line is here. In that case, we're simply going to castle, right? Play rook over to e1, okay? You want to put your rook on an open file. And here, for a move like c6, you want to centralize one of your knights, right? Centralize this knight, and you know, from this point, we can centralize our other knight. We can bring this knight to c5. putting this rook on c1 is a great idea. And we're just playing some fun chess, right, with a slight advantage for white there. So just going back, I know we went over a ton of different options and different sidelines and stuff. This is the main line, okay, this right here. This is the main line of the Giuoco piano, okay? e4, knight f3, attacking the pawn, bishop out. And if you do see bishop c5, we want to play c3 and d4, kicking that bishop around. If we have a check, we're going to block with our bishop. If you take, we take back with the knight. d5 is the best move for black, but in that case, we're going to take and form a battery ram against that knight. If black defends it, we castle, activate our rook, centralize our knight, and all the moves as highlighted are options for you going forward. Now, what options do we have for black, right? In fact, we're about to go to the beginning position and look at the move of e4. In that case, what does black have available? Let's take a look. Well, if you guys aren't aware, right, there's a ton of different openings that we can play. We got the French, e5, which can lead into a ton of different things. Perk, Scandinavian, Carl Kahn, Sicilian, Nimzowitsch, Owens, Alekhine's, Modern, the Hippo. I'm a huge fan of the Hippo, by the way. Which is a great beginner opening, so I might do something on that soon. But I wanted to start out with my childhood opening, which I recommend, which is the Scandinavian defense with d5. Okay, now after e takes, the main line is taking back with the queen, but this is not what I recommend for beginners. Oftentimes it's said that you shouldn't bring your queen out too early in the game, and the Scandinavian defense is the rare exception to the rule if you know what to do. But my personal favorite, especially for beginners, is simply bringing this knight out. Here's the deal. If white just makes a move or something, we'll just take the pawn right back, right? Even if you play bishop out, we'll just take this pawn, right? If you take with the bishop, our queen captures back, right? If you play knight here, we take the pawn, right? We're just going to get the pawn back. The only way for white to hold on to this pawn and stay up material is to play c4. And I saw this move all the time. When I was growing up, playing as a kid, I saw c4 constantly. And in one sense, it makes some sense, right? At least, when you think about the fact that white here is trying to hold onto their extra pawn, but they give up too much in return. We play this move of c6. Key move here, guys, okay? Move 3, c6, attacking the pawn. And okay, white can trade off, and they're up a pawn now, but notice just how awkward their position is. In addition to the fact that we have 2 pieces developed, they have 0. Okay, we have 2 knights out. They still haven't got any pieces activated in this game. And really the major weakness in this position is d4 for white. Okay, we have a knight and a queen attacking it. If white plays d4, we're going to win our pawn right back, right? We can just take it right off. And okay, if white here plays a move like knight f3, trying to help make this move happen, we're not going to play something quiet like g6. We got to take control of the center with e5, right? Preventing d4 from being played. And now we're going to quickly develop, right? There's a lot of moves here. I know Stockfish likes this move, e4. I've always been a fan of bishop f5, right? Bishop f5, just starting to pile on this pawn. I've played this before where, I kind of just develop both bishops, I castle, and I just start, just going crazy on this pawn. This is considered a backwards pawn on d3 because it can't move forward without being captured by one of our pawns, and it can't move forward with help from their own pawns, right? If you look at all of white's pawns, there's no pawn on the board that will ever be able to help this pawn go to d4, right? No pawn can ever get to one of these 2 squares unless, of course, there's some kind of capture, right? That's the only way. So, okay, there's a lot of things that can happen here. If something like bishop e2, we can always check, right, and then play a move like e4. A lot can happen here. By the way, if white takes, we capture back with the knight, and it's a little bit interesting. Usually when we're down material, we don't want to trade down, and we don't want to trade queens. But in this case, we have so much development that it only helps us, right? White here has 3 pieces developed. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 developed with a current threat of taking on c3, right? And here, if white tries to hold on to it, okay, we'll take and we'll play knight d4, right? We're now threatening to fork the king and the rook, right? Simply winning a rook in that position. And okay, I mean, and white's in some serious trouble. The computer recommends moves like rook d1 and bishop d1, right? I mean, talk about awkward chess. From that point, we're simply going to castle kingside and just keep playing active, right? This is what we want in this opening. We want to go down a pawn, but we want to get a ton of development and activity in return. And, Stockfish gives the advantage to black here. By the way, if white just goes, you know what, I want to stop this fork by castling, well, in that case, we can take on e2 right away, right? That's an option, right? Take on e2 right away. But a little bit better, I think, is taking on c3, removing the defender, and then taking on e2 with check. And notice here, guys, once the king moves, rook takes d2 is also played. We're going to be up 2 pieces at this point, right? So, yeah, going back, we take the knight. The best move there is actually for white to not take and play something like bishop f3. But at this point, guys, I mean, it's almost -8, okay, in terms of the evaluation. I mean, black's just crushing this. There's no way around it. So, you know, going back, when you do see knight f6, right, with the modern variation, by the way, if you want to look more into it, and you see the move of c4, this is great news for us. We play c6, and if they take, we take back with the knight e5, you know, bishop f5, bishop c5 or b4, play active, play e4, break that game open, you're going to be in business, right? What about the main line here for white? The main line for a lot of players is d4, okay? Now, d4 kind of just hands us back the pawn. Now, in this case, we're going to take with the knight, right? We're going to just take that pawn back. What do we do with c4? We're going to bring our knight to the queen side of the board. We're giving white some central control here, but we're now going to make the center a target, right? There's a couple moves here that you'll see a lot, knight f3 or knight c3. First off, we'll start with knight f3. This is the best move, by the way. In that case, you know, there's some options here, right? If you really want to get complicated, there's moves here like c5 that are available. Bishop g4 is a move. But most players just go with g6, fianchetto that bishop, and castle, right? Just develop, right? That's what most players do. And if you see something like bishop e3, we'll just play knight c6. Notice the amount of pressure that we're putting on white's center, and white might be tempted to start pushing us around, right? If a move like c5, we play knight d5, centralizing our knight. If a move like d5, we actually play knight a5 here, right? And sure, our knight is on the edge of the board, but in this case, we're putting a ton of pressure on this pawn, right? A ton of pressure. If white continues to push, we can't take this right away because we just lose our knight, but we can remove the defender of that centralized pawn, take on d5, and now we're up a pawn, not to mention that white has isolated and double isolated pawns, right? Not good for white, right? So, yeah, going back to that move of knight a5, c5 here, simply too weakening. White is overstretching a ton. If you see something like here, e5 is actually a good option. You can plug that into Stockfish and see the lines that it's coming up with. And I did want to mention, if white tries to defend this pawn with a move like knight e2, let's start chipping away at that center, right? Start chipping away, right? And if a move like b3, what did this just hang? Yeah, that knight on c3. This bishop flies out of nowhere, and we're also going to win the rook as well, right? So at least have that option available. So it's you know, a really solid system there for black with knight f6, right? Remember, against d4, we're taking that pawn, playing knight b6, and there's some options white can play here. I mentioned though that knight f3 is by far the best move. Why is knight c3 not so good? Well, I remember that I played this. I was white in this situation, and I played knight c3 in a tournament back in my scholastic days, a big tournament, Super Nationals in Tennessee. Happens in the United States every 4 years, and I forget exactly how many players there were. I know one year they had over like 5,000 kids competing, which, I mean, if you think about that, think about all the families that came. I mean, there were thousands and thousands of people at this tournament. It was crazy. All that to say, I was playing a game as white. I played knight c3. My opponent played e5, and my heart kind of sank a little bit because I've seen this move before, and it's just, at the end of the day, guys, it's just hard for white to play this. It just is, okay? It's hard for white to play this. You know, the most popular move online that I see on lead chess is d5. In that case, we have bishop b4. And notice, if you do play d5, I mean, this just gives us great control over the dark squares, right? These pawns are just too far advanced. c5 is not going to happen anytime soon. We got great coverage on that square. You know, bishop b4, attacking that pinned knight is a great option, potentially just damaging white's pawn structure like crazy. You know, going back, what about this move of d takes pawn, right? Why doesn't white just win a pawn here? Well, they can win a pawn, but again, we're going to get so much development in return that it's worth it, more than worth it. Here we're going to take the queen on d1. And, okay, I mean, really our approach stays the same. Why, you know, if knight or king takes, notice if knight takes, we're really going to do the same thing. We're going to play knight c6, bishop e6, continue developing quickly. I did want to mention, though, why king takes d1 is not the best option, okay? I think knight takes d1 is actually slightly better. Neither are great. It's not like either of these moves are super awesome positions for white to work with. But white may want to take back with the king just so that they can at least have one piece developed, right? But in this case, here's the idea. We play knight c6, attack the pawn. If you want to defend it with a move like f4, okay, we bring the bishop out. Yet again, we're attacking this pawn. And if you want to hold on to it again with a move like b3, we castle queenside with check, right? Not only does your king not castle in this game, but ours castled. And while we do castle, we check your king, right? Huge advantage there. If a move like king c2, we can start making space on the queen side, looking to break this thing open with something like a4. We have bishop f5 check available, knight b4 check available, quick development with bishop c5. White's position here is simply too far extended, and the computer definitely gives an edge to black. So all that to say, guys, the Giuoco piano and the Scandinavian defense of the modern variation, both of these are very fun to play. They're going to help you learn development, putting pressure on the king, castling quickly, all that kind of stuff. And, really try to get these openings down, and you're going to be well on your way to hitting that intermediate level. Thanks for watching today's video. I wanted to give a big shout out to my Patreon supporters for the month of May in 2023. If you haven't checked out the Patreon before, make sure to go check it out. There's a lot of exclusive benefits that you gain by becoming a member. Again, thanks for watching today's video, and I'll see you in the next one.